Hi everyone, I'm Jason Jurtich, and this is the Mobile Philosopher. In this video, we're going to compare the iPhone 6s Plus and the Nexus 6. Now, I do not have favoritisms. I use both Android and iOS equally. Both of them have advantages and disadvantages in regards to software, and I will mention those a little bit here in this video. But I think it's important to take to note that even though someone might have a favoritism, I think objectively speaking, both of these phones are extremely good, and there are certain things that one side has over the other, which I will explain here, to such a degree that I go back and forth between the iPhone and Nexus. I don't use anything else except the Nexus, and I'll explain that right now. And that is because I do not like Android being manipulated. I do not see the sense in manipulating Android. I do not understand why Samsung or LG manipulate so much the Android operating system. What is Marshmallow is excellent. It's not needed that you manipulate it, and it works the most fluently. I know there are a couple of options that are added on to Android afterwards with the Samsung and the LG, but let's take this into consideration. How hard would it be for them to just create extra apps that you could download from the Google Play Store instead of integrating them into the operating system and manipulating it? And I'll tell you why. Because I know a lot of people who've been using Samsung's phones, and because of the massive manipulation of Android, many times it ends up having problems. Whereas with the Nexus, with the pure Android, I have never had any problems. On top of that, and that's one of the reasons why I compare these two, is that both of these get updates the instant that both companies send them out. Whereas with Samsung and LG, sometimes you're waiting months or even, dare I say, years. So therefore, I will not touch, even though I have to admit that the hardware on the Samsung S7 that just came out is much better probably than both of these phones. The problem is because Samsung manipulates so much its software, that's one of the reasons why I sadly will not touch it, even though I love what symbolizes Samsung Pay. It's an awesome thing that neither of these guys will probably ever have. But I'm willing to sacrifice Samsung Pay, even though it's a massive advantage, because of the fact that I want security and efficiency in my operating system, which is something that Samsung just simply is not offering right now, very sadly. So both of these are pure operating systems. This is obviously running 601, and this is running 921. So both of these are completely up to date. Now, leaving the software aside, let's just talk a little bit about the hardware. The hardware here, basically both of these guys have 12 megapixel cameras. Obviously, and you can see the details. I'll put the details of each camera under the video here. I'm not going to spend time on that, because the idea here is to talk about the advantages and disadvantages. But both cameras will actually take fairly good pictures. So in that case, it's pretty good. What is the major problem here? Both on this guy here and on the Nexus 6P, which I will not be getting precisely because of this, there is no optical stabilization for video, whereas on the 6S Plus, they put it in and it works out very well. So I'm extremely happy with the optical stabilization, image stabilization that the iPhone 6s Plus has for video. Both of these have it for pictures, and that's fine, and it works really well. But the image stabilization that you get in the 6s Plus for video is the best I've seen so far. I know there are a couple of Android phones out right now that are trying to compete with that. The new Mi 5 that has just come out seems to have optical image stabilization for video that's even better than this guy. But for right now, this one is the best one I've seen so far in real life, out in the wild, so to speak. And so therefore, that's a massive advantage over the Nexus 6 and Nexus 6P, which sadly does not have almost any type of any serious optical image stabilization for video, both with photo, but this guy completely lacks it with video. So that's one of the major advantages right now over the 6S Plus, is the reason why I'm using this for videos and whatnot. So there's another thing here that I like over this, the 6S Plus over the Nexus 6, and that has to do with, unfortunately, the operating system. The audio latency right now is terrible for Android. They are working on this, and I am dearly hoping that within one or two versions more, which equals 1 or 2 more years, unfortunately. They will fix that. But for right now, if you are a musician in any way, shape, or form, you have to stick with the 6S Plus. There's no way of jumping to the Nexus or Android right now because there's still a lot of problems there. Now, having said that, I have had luck, and I will put the application that I've been using down here. If you use a USB mic, you have to get a special USB adapter, which I will also put under the video. If you put a USB adapter here and you get a USB mic, there is actually an application that I found that will allow you to get almost good audio recording, meaning that you can monitor your audio in real time, very low latency. But that's because the application has tweaked quite a few things so that you can do that. So I will put that under the video so you can see. But unfortunately, you still have to have very special things to do that with this type of phone, and the phone has to have a fairly good CPU, otherwise that application with USB mic won't work either. So for right now, for music, if you're going to produce music, the iPhone 6s Plus is still going to be much better for producing music and whatnot because of the low latency that we have on the audio here, whereas this one is still suffering quite a bit. And other applications that do not seriously modify something within Android still have lots of problems with that. So again, I'll put that application under the video so you guys can play around with it, and as well as offer the microphone that was that I found worked well with this, at least close enough to where it was acceptable, even though it still wasn't as nice and easy to use as on the iPhone 6s Plus. So in regards to video, this guy wins. In regards to music making, the iPhone 6s Plus still wins here. Now let's talk about the advantage of the Android here. The reason why I like Android so much is obviously because it has Google, and Google means Google Drive, Google Apps, which I use tremendously at work. And for me, it's a major advantage because then you can use this guy, which is the Chromecast. The Chromecast is the equivalent to an Apple TV. The only difference is it's massively smaller. Okay, that sounds a bit strange, but I know. It is much smaller than an Apple TV. And actually, funny enough, the Apple TV got bigger in the second version, which really made me sad because the Apple TV is pretty cool. But you cannot carry an Apple TV around nearly as well as you can carry around a Chromecast. So the advantage here is that I can reflect and mirror the screen of the Android cell phones on a Chromecast. So I can put these in my pocket and basically create myself a mini PC, so to speak, with a screen. And the other advantage here with the Android is that you can actually connect a Bluetooth mouse, which you cannot do with iPhone, unfortunately, yet. Hopefully Apple will bend to that sooner or later, but they have yet to do so. So because they're being hard-headed, you cannot use a Bluetooth mouse with this. So therefore, if you want to use a Bluetooth mouse, then you'd have to go to Android. So the nice thing about the Nexus and Android in general right now is that you can use the Chromecast and a Bluetooth mouse if you want to transform this into basically a simplified PC if you connected this to a screen. So those are a couple of things that I find that are better on this. In regards to applications, there are some applications that work better here than here. Funny enough, there's a lot of applications that still are not optimized for the 5.5-inch screen on the 6s Plus, which frustrates the heck out of me. Whereas on Android, those applications look very nice. So that's a small advantage here. But otherwise, in most applications that are most popular, you're going to be able to use on both of these, so it makes no difference in this case. And I use about 12 banks, international banks, on these two guys, and they both work well. Funny enough, there was a bank that I used that for some reason, because of the Nexus being so new, a few months ago, it wasn't working. So that's a slight disadvantage. Sometimes an application on a certain version of a phone, it doesn't have to be necessarily the version of Android. And in this case, it was already on Marshmallow, but the poor bank wasn't up to date with their application, so it suffered a little bit on this guy. So some of the applications will actually get more up to date faster on the iPhone than on Android. But in general, most of the applications are going to work fine on both. And sometimes they actually look better on the Android operating system than on the iOS in that case. Now, let's talk about, go back. I'm jumping back and forth here, I understand, but I hope the review at least helps someone. Here in regards to a couple of things with hardware, I love the fact that you can use your finger to open and unlock the phones here. Android is coming out with those. The Nexus 6P has that and is just as fast as the iPhone 6s Plus here. But unfortunately, as you guys know, if you haven't seen other videos, the fingerprint sensor, unfortunately, right now is not the most secure. They're making a new one, and I will try to share the video below as a link below this video. That's they're trying to make it so that it's much more sensitive. But right now, you can basically with glue or a piece of plastic, you can trick these guys both on this one and on the Android ones. Unfortunately, because they're just not detailed enough, you can trick them because they only just they see curves and whatnot. Yeah, but you can pretty much trick it with almost anything. So they're not secure enough yet, but in theory, within 1 or 2 years, they should come out with a new fingerprint sensor that should be much better and much harder to crack or hack, however you want to say it. So in that case, in relation to that, but I still feel like on a daily basis, this is much easier to do. And in worst case scenario, yeah, let's say that someone robs my phone, whether it be an Android 6SP or this one. The fact of the matter is, given the fact that both Android, and this is another advantage of pure Android, because in Android Marshmallow, you can lock and erase your phone completely with in such a way that they cannot use your phone, just like on the iPhone right now, making sure you, again, have Android 6 here in such a way that if someone robs my phone, usually I'm not on the moon because these things are so much a part of my life. It would be a maximum of 5 minutes after I realize that I'm missing my phone. I just jump online, no matter where, whether it be iCloud or just Google, and I can lock these things to where they become absolutely useless. So in that case, even if this was a slight danger where someone could hack this with just a piece of tape or whatnot, they're not going to be able to do it fast enough before I realize that I'm missing my phone to where I can lock it and make it absolutely useless for them. They can't even restart the system here. They have it in such a way right now that basically the phones become totally useless to anyone who robs them. So that's a nice thing on both these, the Marshmallow here with the Nexus and on the iPhone, that if they do get robbed, if you are aware and fast enough, you get online, you can block these guys to such a degree that they become completely useless, not even worth selling. So that's a nice advantage between these for both of these guys. But the fingerprint sensor, I have to say, instead of doing 50 million numbers here and 50 million swipes on your screen, I love it much more when the fingerprint sensor is there, and I'm very happy that Google decided to put it on the Nexus 6P. Now, another thing here that I loved about the Android, which I don't like about the iPhone, is that this guy has wireless charging, which they did not put in the Nexus 6P, which is another reason why I'm not going to buy it. I find it absurd. So many people bought wireless chargers, and then Google decided not to put in the 6P, and the excuse was that because the wireless the cable charging with the USB-C is so fast, and then you don't need it. Well, that didn't go well with most people who had the wireless chargers. It didn't go well with me, and I'm certainly not touching it because of that. So Google can decide what they want to do in relation to that with their customers. But the fact of the matter is the wireless charging is very nice. Instead of having to put in and pull out the cable 50 million times, just putting on top of a wireless charger, it was one of the more awesome things about this phone, actually. And it's something that hopefully the iPhone will add in the future as long as they figure out, and usually Apple will add it as long as they can figure out a way of making it charge fast enough, which is just a slight disadvantage that it does charge slower. But hopefully that will be fixed within a year or so to where the USB-C advantage of charging it fast will become completely obsolete. And in fact, I'm hoping that in the future, these guys down here, both entrances, will become obsolete because the wireless, both in headphones and in charging, will take over that, and you won't need an entrance here anymore. But either way, that's an advantage over here, the Nexus 6, which the iPhone does not have. I like the 6-inch screen. Apple is probably not going to get bigger because they think that people are going to think that if we go any bigger, then it'll take the place of the tablets. And unfortunately, right now, tablets are suffering tremendously because of these types of screens. And if Apple makes this any bigger, most likely their poor iPad minis would probably suffer or fade away. So they're probably not going to make this screen any bigger precisely because of that. I like the 6-inch screens, and if anyone makes a pure Android 6-inch screen phone in the future, I probably will bend very seriously to it, but unfortunately I don't see anyone doing, besides Google, pure Android. So the 6-inch screen I like a lot because it basically does take the place of a small tablet, and for me that's a massive advantage. So those are a few things here that I wanted to mention. As you can see on the back, this is made of aluminum. The aluminum here on the 6S Plus is much harder than the 6S, the 6 Plus was rather, which is a nice advantage. But I usually always cover the screens with some sort of glass so that if they end up hitting the ground, then it will just break the glass and not the original under it. And again, here, the headphone jack, it really hasn't affected me. It's on the bottom and this one on the top. That's really never affected me at all. They both use nano SIM cards, so that doesn't affect anything. I can swipe one out and put in the other and happily go my way without having to worry about changing the size of the SIM card, so that's also very good. Battery life, the iPhone 6s Plus is going to win just because of the efficiency of the operating system. Android's still suffering with that. The 601 obviously has helped that tremendously, but I would still have to say that they're pretty much the same, but this guy's still going to win slightly more over the Nexus here. So those are the basic points I wanted to mention in regards to these phones. There's obviously plenty of other things that you could mention in relationship to these, but I just wanted to underline the fact that they both have advantages and disadvantages, and I don't think there's any way of saying that one's completely plastering the other in any way, shape, or form. And in the future, as long as both companies keep on making awesome phones, then I will probably go back and forth to see which one ultimately will have the upper hand. But for right now, I'd have to say that I'm going to be going back and forth here still because of the fact that I don't see any real winner here yet. As soon as Android, in fact, fixes its problem with the video optical image stabilization and its audio with the latency going down, I would have to say that this is going to be a very serious contender to the iPhone then, with the advantages of the new Qualcomm chips, the 820 and such coming out. So we'll have to see. This is a very close race, and I'd have to say that within a year or two, this will finally be an equal match, and it will be a very, very heavy competition. So we'll have to see what happens. If you guys have any other questions in regards to these, you can put them in the comments below. Before I'm jumping around again, but the speaker-wise, the speaker's obviously going to be better here on this guy than this guy. I don't listen to music with the speakers on phones, so I really don't care. Even if the phones came without speakers, it wouldn't affect me, but either way. So to let this go, because I want to keep on going here forever. If you have any other questions about the phones or comments or doubts about them, about which one works better in certain areas or moments, please put those in the comments below. And if this video has helped you make a better decision on what you want to do in the future, then please let me know by subscribing or even donating so I can continue making these videos for others who have curiosities and doubts about the same things. Thank you very much and take care.